President had to say.
We will not go back to an economy weakened by outsourcing, bad debt, and phony financial profits. It's time to apply the same rules from top to bottom. No bailouts, no handouts, and no cop-outs.
Where to begin? How about the no bailouts part?
Well, he obviously did have quite a few bailouts at the beginning of his presidency. He now says he won't have any bailouts. And it was strange to me that actually later in the speech he celebrated a bailout, which was with the assistance that the Treasury Department gave to General Motors and Ford. I mean, I thought both those statements were kind of confusing and didn't make a fair amount of sense. He also talked about outsourcing, of an economy weakened by outsourcing. It's unclear how much the U.S. economy was economic crisis occurred because of outsourcing, or what President Obama has done about it.
And do we know what he was talking about when he said phony financial profits?
That is a bit of a mystery to me.
Okay, let's move on to the third one, because one of the central arguments he's been making, and he had Warren Buffett's secretary in the First Lady's box last night at the State of the Union, is that there are people, middle-class people, who are paying less in taxes than multi-millionaires like Warren Buffett. This is what he said.
Right now, because of loopholes and shelters in the tax code, a quarter of all millionaires pay lower tax rates than millions of middle-class households.
I want to ask you about that, but I want to correct one thing. It wasn't Ford that got the bailout, it was Chrysler that got the bailout money. Ford actually passed up on it.
Right,
We
exactly.
just want to clear that up. But let's go back to talking about it. Is it true that people who are middle class are paying less in taxes than their millionaire bosses?
Yes, there are obviously some examples of that. The examples that I've found are few and far between. I mean, he gave that statistic there. He said 1/4 of millionaires. What that means is, if you look at the data, that's 94,000 millionaires versus tens of millions of ordinary Americans. Now, there are, in general, the same data will show that on average, people that earn more than $1 million pay on average about 30% of their income in taxes. So he's taking a small example and making a political case out of it. But the way he makes that statement, it sounds like it's a bigger problem than it really is.
More sweeping than it is. So one of the other things the president does at these speeches is he says, we will do this, we will do that. But he was speaking to a famously divided Congress. To what degree can the president accomplish some of the things he laid out last night without any kind of legislative buy-in?
Well,
bipartisan legislative buy-in.
Many of those things will require legislative action. And so it's a kind of a call to arms for his political supporters. I went back and looked at how successful he was in implementing his ideas in the 2011 State of the Union, and it was a pretty meager record. Many of the things he proposed were never enacted into law.
For example? I didn't mean to put you on the spot, sorry.
Go look at my column. I had little X's and checks there.
Okay.
But to be fair to him, is that I also looked at it in 2010, a year ago, and he had a phenomenal success record then. Virtually everything he said he was going to do actually passed into law, but that's because it was a Democratic-controlled Congress.
Funny how that changes. Well, Glenn Kessler, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And finally, we're going to turn